There comes a point where you stop asking why he changed, why he pulled away, or why he treated you like you didn't matter. Because deep down, you already know, he didn't value you the way you valued him. He got used to the version of you that stayed, that forgave, that waited. And the longer you held on, the more he believed he could give you less and still keep you. But here's what changes everything. You don't need to fight. You don't need to plead. You just need to leave cold, clean, and done. Not out of revenge, not to get his attention, but because you've finally remembered who you are and you're done letting someone forget. When someone starts treating you like an option, like your presence is expected and not earned, your first instinct might be to fight harder for their attention. You might raise your voice, send longer texts, try to make them understand what they're doing wrong. You think that if you create enough noise, you'll wake them up to the damage they're causing. But here's the reality. Matching their carelessness with chaos doesn't bring clarity. It keeps you emotionally entangled in a situation that's already beneath your standards. The smarter move is to respond with calm, with control, and with quiet conviction. Not everything deserves a reaction, especially not someone who's already shown you what they're willing to risk losing. We often think walking away needs to be dramatic in order to be effective, that slamming doors, emotional speeches, or final texts are what makes someone realize what they lost. But if he didn't appreciate you while you were calmly and consistently showing up, he's not going to suddenly see your value because you screamed on the way out. Emotional explosions don't build self-respect. They often just leave you drained and regretting the energy you gave. True clarity, the kind that shifts your entire dynamic, comes when you stop playing his game altogether. When someone is careless with you, it's easy to feel like you have to do something to prove your worth. You want to show him what he's losing. You want to make sure he remembers you. But the person who wins in these situations isn't the one who tries harder. It's the one who stops explaining, stops engaging, and simply exits. When you do that, you create a silence that can't be argued with. You're not reacting, you're deciding. And that kind of calm detachment is far more powerful than any confrontation. Walking away with clarity means you've stopped asking, "Why did he do this?" and started asking, "Why am I still accepting this?" That single question changes everything. It shifts the power dynamic from him to you. You begin to see that his inconsistency isn't a puzzle you need to solve. It's a message you need to hear. He doesn't value you in the way you deserve, and the more you stay to try to convince him otherwise, the more you devalue you yourself. There's a quiet strength in leaving without fanfare, not because you don't care, but because you've learned that your care has limits, and it ends where your dignity begins. People who operate with emotional immaturity expect you to respond with drama. They expect chaos, arguments, desperate texts. That's how they stay in control, by keeping you emotionally reactive. But when you stop giving that to them, when you match their carelessness with your calm clarity, you take that control back. You show them that your emotions don't revolve around their behavior anymore. And yes, that might catch them off guard. They might reach out. They might suddenly realize what they had. But by that point, it won't matter. Because your decision to leave wasn't based on whether or not they'd regret it. It was based on the fact that you've outgrown the need to be chosen by someone who never knew your value to begin with. You're not leaving to prove a point. You're leaving because the point has already been proven. You're not matching his emotional immaturity with your own. You're meeting his carelessness with the only thing that truly ends a toxic dynamic: clarity, silence, and a clean break. That's how you leave like he never mattered. Because once someone shows you they don't see your worth, your only job is to stop offering it to them. There's a big difference between being cold and being cruel, and understanding that difference is key when you're walking away from someone who failed to value you. When you've been hurt, ignored, or dismissed by someone you deeply cared for. Detaching emotionally can feel unnatural, especially if you're someone who leads with love. But choosing to go cold isn't about revenge or spite. It's about control. It's about taking your power back from a situation that has drained you and deciding that your peace is more important than their confusion. When you detach, you might be called cold, heartless, or even selfish, especially by the person who benefited from your warmth. That's because people who are used to your emotional generosity often interpret your boundaries as punishment. But that's not your responsibility. You don't owe softness to someone who handled you with carelessness. You don't owe patience to someone who took advantage of your kindness. Emotional detachment isn't about shutting down who you are. It's about shutting off the parts of you that were bleeding for someone who never brought you a bandage. Being cold means you've stopped negotiating your worth. You're no longer over-explaining yourself, trying to get them to see what they've done, or waiting for the bare minimum. It means you're no longer emotionally available to someone who hasn't shown up consistently. It's a boundary, not a weapon. Because when you've spent too much time hoping someone will change, there comes a point when protecting your heart has to become your priority. That's when cold becomes necessary. You've already given the warmth. You've already poured in your time, your energy, your care. You've already communicated your needs, stayed through the silences, forgiven the letdowns, and still you were met with indifference, confusion, or emotional distance. So now it's your turn to pull back. Not to play games, not to make them chase you, but because you finally see that continuing to give warmth to someone who only grows colder in response is self-betrayal. You can't keep setting yourself on fire to keep someone else comfortable. Emotional control is not about pretending you don't feel. It's about choosing what you respond to and what you reserve for people who deserve it. Being cold is choosing to no longer overextend yourself in a dynamic that gives you less and less. It's being intentional with your time, your replies, your energy. It's letting go of the fantasy that if you just hang on a little longer, they'll change. It's looking at reality and honoring it. Sometimes the most self-loving thing you can do is to stop showing the best parts of yourself to someone who barely noticed them. That doesn't make you cruel, that makes you conscious. It means you've stopped begging for love and started embodying it for yourself. That is what emotional control looks like, not the absence of feelings, but the wisdom to protect them. There's a calm that comes when you finally stop fighting to be understood by someone who isn't listening. You don't need to yell, you don't need to explain. You don't need to convince anyone that your absence is justified. Cold is clarity, cold is quiet confidence, cold is knowing you gave them enough chances to change, and they didn't. Now, your only responsibility is to change how you respond, not with noise, not with emotion, but with space. With silence, with the kind of detachment that says, I don't need to hurt you back. I just need to stop letting you hurt me. There's a moment in every broken connection when you're tempted to do it slowly, when you try to leave gently, piece by piece, hoping they'll notice you slipping away and finally realize your value. But the truth is, slow exits rarely bring closure. They keep the door cracked open for someone who already walked through it without looking back. When someone has shown you that they don't take your love seriously, the most self-respecting thing you can do is make the cut sharp, clean, and complete. No half measures, no emotional leftovers, no revisiting what you've already decided to walk away from. Half leaving is still staying. When you're emotionally checked out but still respond to their messages, still watch their stories, still let them back in when they need comfort, you're not really gone. You're still giving them access to your energy even if your heart knows better. And the longer you linger in that in-between space, the harder it becomes to break free. You stay stuck, hoping for change, waiting for clarity, slowly giving more of yourself away while receiving less in return. Making the cut sharp doesn't mean being cruel. It means being decisive. It means acknowledging that dragging out your eggs, it is just a way of avoiding the pain of letting go. But pain delayed is still pain felt, and often it hits harder when you've tried to make your departure more comfortable than it needs to be. You don't need to give them endless explanations. You don't need to ease them into your absence. You don't need to soften your boundaries to protect their feelings. Because let's be honest, if they cared about your feelings, you wouldn't be leaving in the first place. There's power in the clean break. It sends a clear message, not just to them, but to yourself. I am no longer available for this version of love. That's how you reclaim your identity. That's how you start to rebuild your confidence. Because every time you go back, respond, or wait for their behavior to shift, you're telling yourself that your boundaries are negotiable. And the more you compromise, the harder it becomes to trust yourself the next time you need to walk away. Block the number if you need to, mute them, unfollow, not because you're immature, but because you're finally being honest with yourself. You can't heal while keeping them in your peripheral vision. Every glimpse into their life, every late night message you answer, every just checking in moment pulls you backward. It reopens wounds that were trying to close. So let the cut be clean, not to make a scene, but to make space. For peace, for growth, for real love, the kind that doesn't make you question your worth. Some people don't deserve a long goodbye. They don't deserve to be gently phased out of your life. They deserve the quiet realization that you're gone, fully, finally, and without apology. Not because you want to punish them, but because you're finally choosing to protect yourself. You've already explained, already waited, already hoped for something more. But hoping doesn't heal you, honesty does. So make the cut, say less, do less, respond less, take your presence away completely. Because if someone didn't value you when they had all of you, they shouldn't get pieces of you after you've decided to leave. Half measures only prolong your pain. A sharp, clean break. That's how healing begins. That's how you go from barely letting go to being fully done. You don't need to explain your goodbye to someone who made you feel like you were always too much or never enough. When someone has shown you, through their actions or their absence, that they were never truly listening, you owe them nothing least of all a carefully worded explanation for your departure. We get so caught up in needing to be understood that we forget the power of simply walking away, not because we're cold, but because we're clear. Clear on who we are, clear on what we deserve, and clear that anything that needs to be explained this many times isn't worth another word. There's this idea that closure is about sitting across from the person who hurt you and laying everything out, your pain, your confusion, your disappointment, and hoping they finally see what they did. But what if they never will? What if their version of reality is built on denial, deflection, or just plain indifference? Waiting for them to get it, to own it, to feel it, is just another way of staying emotionally attached. And the longer you stay attached, the longer you delay your healing. He doesn't need another message, another conversation, another chance to rewrite the story. He already read the book and chose to ignore the meaning. He knew what he was doing when he pulled away, when he gave you less, when he started treating you like you were replaceable. That wasn't an accident, that was a decision. And when someone chooses to act like you don't matter, you are fully within your right to act like they don't deserve an explanation when you finally walk away. It's tempting to think that if we just explain our feelings perfectly, if we just find the right words, then maybe they'll finally understand. But people hear what they want to hear, and when someone has already made up their mind about how little effort they're going to give, your explanations won't shift anything. They'll just exhaust you. You'll be pouring clarity into a person who's emotionally unavailable by choice. That's not communication, that's self-sacrifice. Sometimes silence is the most powerful closure you can give. Not to punish, but to preserve. When words don't work, when conversations go in circles, and when vulnerability is met with indifference, the best thing you can do is stop talking. Not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. Your silence isn't passive, it's a boundary. It's you choosing to protect your dignity instead of defending your decisions to someone who wasn't even trying to understand in the first place. When you walk away without an explanation, it doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you finally care enough about yourself to stop begging someone to care back. It means you've realized that not everyone deserves access to your heart, your voice, or your reasons. Especially not someone who made you feel like none of it mattered while they had you. So instead of crafting the perfect goodbye, just go. Instead of writing out your pain for the 10th time, keep it for yourself and turn it into strength. You don't have to prove your pain. You don't have to educate them on the damage they caused. The fact that you stayed as long as you did, that you tried as much as you did, that you loved as deeply as you did, that says enough. And you're leaving, that says even more. No drama, no final text, just peace, just distance, just a life that no longer includes them. That's the kind of ending that doesn't need punctuation. Because your silence will echo louder than anything you could have said. There's a big difference between trying to look like you've moved on and actually doing the work to move on. One is performance, the curated social media, the forced smiles, the subtle attempts to make sure he sees what he's missing. The other is private, unglamorous, and powerful. It's when you stop caring whether or not he's watching and start caring whether or not you feel free. If you're still checking whether he's viewed your story or secretly hoping he'll reach out, you haven't left emotionally. You're just hiding your pain behind a mask. And the truth is, that kind of pretending only keeps you tied to someone you were meant to outgrow. Real moving on is quiet. It doesn't seek validation. It doesn't announce itself. It's not about broadcasting that you're doing fine. It's about genuinely being fine, even when no one's watching. You wake up one day and realize you didn't think about him the night before. You pass by a place you once shared, and there's no sting in your chest. That's not because you posted the right picture or said the right things. It's because you did the internal work of letting go. It's because you stopped building your healing around his potential reaction and started building it around your own peace. When your growth is driven by a desire to be